Good morning, everybody. I know all of you know my name, but I'll just say it anyway. My name is Cynthia, and I will be your MC this morning. It's so nice to see so many of you, and thank you very, very much for joining us. We will begin our service with the ringing of the Kansho, or the temple bell, which signifies the start of our service. As you may know, it is a deep and sacred ritual steeped in ancient tradition and is the calling of the people to come together to listen to the Dharma or teachings. The bell represents the gratitude and deep appreciation of the members, friends, and guests of the Windward Buddhist temple. Please remain quiet as the bell is being rung. We will now have meditation, followed by the chanting of the Vandana Ti-Sarana, which can be found in your red Jodo Shinshu service book on page 7. Please rise. Please be seated. Our sutra this morning describes the interconnection of all things that support our life and the working of great compassion. It expresses gratitude to everything, So this morning's sutra is Gassho with Amida, and it can be found in your purple supplementary service book on page 14.
This light shines throughout the world. I Gassho with Amida. Flowers bloom and flowers fall. From the seeds sprout new flowers. This is the truth unchanging. I Gassho with Amida. Springtime brings the happy birds. Their songs all praise Amida. I join them in Nembutsu. I Gassho with Amida. When I call Amida's name, it's Amida calling me. Buddha's voice, my voice are one. I Gassho with Amida. When I'm lonely, I recite Namu Amida Butsu. Then I feel great compassion. I Gassho with Amida. Nembutsu in work and play. Every day with Amida. Every moment filled with light. I Gassho with Amida. Remember the golden chain, kindness to all living things. I will follow this teaching. I Gassho with Amida. In the clear bright morning sun, in the fading light of day, in the silence of the night, I Gassho with Amida. Namu Amida Butsu. I live in great compassion. This great power guides my life. I Gassho with Amida.
For the recitation Homages in your red Jodo Shinshu book on page 2. Hard it is to be born into human life. Now we are living in it. Difficult it is to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear them. If we do not gain emancipation in this present life, we may not be free from ill faring in the ocean of births and deaths for kalpas. Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures. We go to the Buddha for guidance. May we always walk in the way that leads to enlightenment. We go to the Dharma for guidance. May we a depth of teachings and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. We go to the Sangha for guidance. May we all with one accord live harmony in the spirit of oneness, free from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriads of kalpas, hard it is to hear such excellent and profound teachings. Now we are able to hear and receive them. Let us try to understand the Tathagata's teachings. Namu Amida Butsu. Please be seated. Oh, sorry. We're going to do Gatha now. Sorry. Okay. Please rise once again and turn to your brown Praises of the Buddha book, page 174, for the Gatha with these hands. Thank you. Please be seated. Our Dharma speaker this morning is our temple member, Dr. Michael Jaffe.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'll move this back. I speak kind of loudly. As always, I'm very grateful to give the Dharma talk here at Windward Buddhist Temple. Cookie, I promised to do one on golf and the Dharma of golf, but I changed my mind. So I owe you one. I'll do it next time, okay? So surely get me scheduled. So during some of these other talks, I've noticed there's been a lot of storybook reading, story time telling. I've been impressed with that. So I thought today, normally I like to talk about science and I like to talk about neuroanatomy related to Buddhism, but today I wanted to read my favorite bedtime story and connect it to Buddhist thought. The story is called Iron John, and there we go. It's a fairy tale called Iron John, and it was written by the Brothers Grimm in the early 1800s. But it's a very interesting book. A poet named Robert Bly, used this story and wrote a book on it, and it was adopted by the men's movement in the mid-90s. Now, I don't know how many of you guys were involved in the men's movement in the 90s, but we sat in Native American sweat lodges, and all we had was little loincloths on, and we talked about our ancestors and our emotionally absent fathers. Anyone? Anyway. It was a thing. So this book was adapted to explain, to help men, that were positive images of masculinity in an increasingly feminist age. So I wanted to go over the story because I think there's a lot of connections with Buddhism as well, teachings on self-sacrifice, non-attachment, and the right path. So this is the story of Iron John. Once upon a time, a king who had near his castle an enormous forest in which wild animals of all sorts lived. One day he dispatched a hunter into the woods to take a deer, but the hunter did not return. Something went wrong out there, said the king, and the next day he sent 2 more hunters out to search for the first, but they did not return either. On the 3rd day he called to his huntsmen and said, "Scour the entire forest and stay there till you found all 3 of them." None of those hunters ever returned, and evermore, the pack of dogs that went out with them never came back either. No one, after that, dared to go into the forest. This situation went on for years, and then one day a strange hunter appeared. He wanted some work to do, and he offered to set foot in the dangerous forest. The king, however, refused to consent, saying, "It is not safe in there. I have the feeling that you will end up like the others, and that we will never see you again." The hunter replied, "Sire, I am well aware of the risks, and fear is nothing I pay attention to." The hunter took his dog with him and walked into the forest. It was not long before the dog picked up the scent of game and went in pursuit. But he had hardly run 3 steps before he stood at the edge of a very deep pool, and he could go no further. And a large arm reached out of the water, grabbed the dog, and pulled him down under. When the hunter saw this, he stated, "Well, this must be the place." He went back to the castle and got 3 men, who came out with pails, and they bucketed out the water. When they got down to the ground, they saw a wild man lying there, whose body was brown as rusty iron. His hair hung down from his head over his face all the way to his knees. They tied him with cords and took him back to the castle. Let's take a quick break from the story. For anyone who's ever done bucketing work, this repetitive bucketing of water is very hard. In previous Dharma talks, I've discussed how the practice of Buddhism doctrine does not come naturally to our evolutionally developed brains. Our brains have been programmed by millennia to want and desire things, resist change, and yes, be self-centered. It is with Buddhist doctrine that we work hard to not desire things, to accept change, and to practice non-self or selflessness. This requires daily practice and effort to stay on this path. I think this is one reason we come to our Windward Buddhist Temple on Sundays. We're all here because it's kind of like going to our Enlightenment AA meeting each week. Back to our story. At the castle, there was great astonishment over the wild man and the king. They had him locked up in an iron cage they had placed in the courtyard of the kingdom, and he forbade anyone to open the locked door. He gave the key to the cage unto the keeping of the queen. Once that had been done, people could go safely into the forest once more again. Now, the king had an 8-year-old son who one day was playing in the courtyard, and during this play, his golden ball fell down into the cage. The boy ran to the cage and said, "Give me my golden ball." "Not until you've opened the door for me," the man answered. "Oh no," said the boy. "The king won't let me," and he ran away. The next day the boy returned and asked for his golden ball again. The wild men said, "If you open the door." But the boy would not. On the third day, while the king was out hunting, the boy came once more and said, "Even if I wanted to, I could not open the lock because I do not have the key." The wild man said, "The key is under your mother's pillow. You can retrieve it." Now, there's a lot of symbolism with the key under the mother's pillow, but that is beyond the scope of the conversation in today's talk. The boy, who really did want his ball back, threw caution to the winds and went to the castle and got the key. The cage door was not easy to open, and the boy pinched his finger. When the door stood open, the wild men walked through it and gave the boy the golden ball and hurried away. The boy suddenly felt great fear. He shouted and cried after him, "Wild man, if you go away, they will punish me." The wild man wheeled around, lifted the boy onto his shoulders, and walked briskly into the forest. I think we can see here an easy connection with dukkha, or suffering. The prince wants his golden ball back, so he hurts his finger. Wants his ball back so bad he hurts his finger on the cage, and has to leave his kingdom with the hairy man. His wants led to both physical and emotional suffering. Luckily for the prince, the third noble truth points out that suffering can end. Now let's get back to our story. The king returned. He noticed the empty cage, inquired of the queen how the wild man had gotten loose. She knew nothing about it. Went to check the key and found it gone. She called the boy, but got no answer. The king sent a search party out in the fields, but they did not find the boy. It was not difficult to guess what had happened, and grief and mourning settled over the royal house. When the wild man reached the dark forest once more, he took the boy from his shoulders, put him down on the earth, and said, "I will keep you with me, for you have set me free. And if you do everything I tell you, all will go well." The wild man prepared a bed of moss for the boy to sleep on, and in the morning took him to a spring. "Do you see this golden spring? It is clear and full of light. I want you to sit beside it and make sure that nothing falls into it, because if that happens, it will wrong the spring. I will return each evening to see if you have obeyed my orders." The boy sat down at the spring's edge. Occasionally he glimpsed a golden fish or golden snake and took care not to let anything fall in. But as he sat there, his wounded finger was so painful that without intending to, he dipped it into the water. He pulled it out instantly, but saw that his finger had turned to gold. And no matter how much he washed it, the washing did no good. Iron John came back that evening and said, "Has anything happened in the spring today?" The boy held his finger behind his back to keep Iron John from seeing it and said, No, nothing at all." "Ah, I see you have dipped your finger in the spring," said the wild man. "I can let it pass, but do not let this happen again." Early the next morning, the boy sat at the spring watching over it. His finger still hurt, and after a while, he ran his hands through his hair. One hair, alas, came loose from his head and fell into the spring. He immediately reached down to pull it out, but the hair had already turned to gold. The moment Iron John returned, he knew exactly what had happened. "You've let a hair fall into the spring. I will allow it this time, but if it happens a third time, it will dishonor the spring, and you will not be able to stay with me any longer." The third day, as the boy sat by the spring, he was determined, no matter how much his finger hurt, not to let it move. Time passed slowly. He began gazing at his reflection of his face in the water. He got the desire to look straight into his own eyes, and in doing so, he leaned further and further. All at once, his long hair fell over his forehead and into the water. He threw his head back, but it was too late. Every bit of his hair had turned gold, and it shone as the sun itself. Now the boy was frightened. He put on a kerchief and covered his head so that the wild man would not know what happened. But when Iron John arrived home, he knew immediately. "Take the kerchief off your head," he said. The hair came down tumbling over his shoulders, and the boy had to be silent. You can't stay here any longer because you did not make it through the trial. Go out into the world now to learn poverty. I see no evil in your heart, however, and I wish you well, so I will give you this gift. Whenever you are in trouble, come to the edge of the forest and shout, Iron John, Iron John, Iron John. And I will come to the edge of the forest to help you. My power is great, greater than you believe. In our story, the hairy man tests the young prince 3 times by the side of the forest pond. Iron John could see the immaturity of the young prince and the need to set him on a path of spiritual growth. Perhaps the 3-day trial of the boy parallels the 3 poisons of Buddhist thought. The 3 poisons of Buddhism are considered the root cause of suffering and the obstacles to enlightenment: ignorance, the inability to see things as they are; greed, the desire to crave for pleasure and possessions; and hatred and ill will towards others. This was an inflection point for the prince to leave the nest of moss and take flight on his own. The king's son left the forest and walked by beaten and unbeaten paths, ever onwards until at length he reached a great city. There was a lot of work. There he looked for work, but could find none. He had learned nothing by which he could help himself. At length he went to the palace and asked if they would take him in. People at court did not know what they could do with him, but finally the cook took him into the service and said he could carry wood and water. Once when it happened there was no one else at hand, the cook ordered the boy to carry food to the royal table. But because the boy did not want his golden hair to be seen, he put his kerchief on. Such a thing had never happened in the king's presence, he said. The king said, "When you come to the royal table, you must take off your head covering." The boy answered, "Lord, I cannot. I have a sore place on my head." The king called the cook up, scolded him, and demanded how could he take such a boy into his service, and told him to fire the boy and get him out of the castle. The cook, however, had pity on the youngster and exchanged him for the gardener's boy. Now the boy had to set out plants and garden and water them, chop with hoe and spade. Once in summer, when he had worked in the garden by himself, it got so hot that he pulled his head covering off, so the breeze would cool his head. When the sun touched his head, his hair glowed and blazed out so brightly that beams of sunlight went all the way to the bedroom of the king's daughter, of course. And she leapt up to see what could it be. She spied the boy outside and called him, "Boy, bring me a batch of flowers." He quickly put his kerchief back on, picked up some wild flowers, and tied them into a bunch. When the boy walked into her room, the king's daughter said, "Take your head thing off. It is not proper for you to wear it in my presence." He replied, "I don't dare do that. I have the mange, you know." She, however, grabbed the kerchief, yanked it off. His golden hair tumbled down around his shoulders, and it was magnificent to look at. He started out the door at a run, but she held him by the arm and gave him a handful of gold coins. He took them and left, but put no stock in them, and in fact brought the coins to the gardener and said, "I am giving these to your children. They can use them as playthings." Not long after the kingdom was swept up in war. The king gathered his forces and was not positive he could succeed against such an enemy as powerful and retained a large army. The gardener's boy said, "I'm quite grown up now. I'm going to go to war. If you just give me a horse." The others laughed and declared, "When you have gone, you go look in the stable. We've certainly left a horse behind for you." When they had all gone, the boy went to the barn, led a horse out. It was lame in one leg, and it walked hippity-hoppity. He climbed on and rode to the forest. When he came to the forest edge, he called 3 times, "Iron John, Iron John, Iron John," so loud that it echoed through the trees. In a moment, the wild man arrived and said, "What is it that you want?" "I want a strong war horse because I intend to go to war." "You will receive that and more than you have ever asked for as well." The wild man turned and went back to the woods, and not long afterwards, a stable boy came out of the trees, leading a war horse that blew air through its nostrils. Running along after the horse came a large band of warriors entirely clothed in iron, and their swords shining in the sun. The boy turned his 3-legged nag over to the stable boy, mounted the new horse, and rode to the head of the soldiers. By the time he neared the battlefield, a large part of the king's army had already been injured, and not much more was needed to bring them into total defeat. The boy and his iron band rode out at full speed, galloped on the enemy like a hurricane, and struck down anyone who opposed them. The enemy turned to flee, but the boy kept after them in pursuit. Then, however, instead of returning to the king, the boy took his band a roundabout way back to the forest and called out, "Iron John, Iron John, Iron John." "What do you want?" the wild man asked. "You can take your horse back and give me my three-legged nag." So it all happened as he requested, and he rode the hibbity-hop back home. When the king returned to the castle, his daughter went to him and congratulated him on his victory. "It was not me," he said, "who managed that, but a strange knight in his warrior band who arrived to help." The daughter asked who the strange knight was, but the king did not know and added, "He galloped off in pursuit of the enemy, and that was the last I saw of him." We can relate this part of the story to the Eightfold Path. The middle way, or the Eightfold Path, is a roadmap for Buddhist living. As our prince goes off to war to protect the kingdom, he is practicing the 8 steps through the 3 divisions of the path. He has wisdom to ask Iron John for help, or right thought, or right view. He has the morality to save the kingdom through battling the enemy, right speech, right effort, right work, right action. And finally, meditation, where a prince is not only mindful of his situation, but able to concentrate on the next steps in his journey and not just revel in victory. The young princess went to the gardener and inquired about his boy, but he laughed and said he had just now arrived home on his 3-legged nag. The farm help made fun of him, shouting, "Guess who's back? Moopy goop." Then they said, "You've been napping under the Bodhi tree, haven't you?" He said back to them, "I fought very well, and if it had not been for me, who knows what would have happened?" And they all fell over themselves laughing. The king said to his daughter, "I'll arrange a great festival that will last 3 days. And you will be the one who throws out the golden apple each day. Perhaps the mysterious knight will appear." After the announcement of the festival had been made, the young man rode to the forest edge and called, "Iron John, Iron John, Iron John." "What do you need?" he asked. "I want to catch the golden apples the king's daughter is going to throw." "Now, there is no problem. You virtually have it in your hands right now," Iron John replied. "I will provide you with more red armor for the occasion and a powerful chestnut horse." The young man galloped to the field at the proper time, rode it among the other knights, and no one recognized him. The king's daughter stepped forward, threw a golden apple to the group of men, and he was the man who caught it. However, having caught it, he galloped off and was gone. When the second day arrived, Iron John had him fitted with a white armor and provided him with a white horse. This time also the apple fell into his hands. Once more, he did not pause for an instant, but galloped off. This made the king angry, and the king said, "This behavior is not allowed. He is supposed to ride over to me and report his name. If he catches the apple a 3rd time and gallops off," he told his men, "chase him. Once more, if he refuses to return, give him a quick blow with your sword." For the 3rd day of the festival, Iron John gave our young man black armor and a black horse. Now, I want to take a minute here to discuss the colors of the horses and the armor and how they relate to the phases of our working lives, red, white, and black. The red phase of our lives is our early career. Here we work extra long hours, we take on extra arduous tasks to advance our employment, we invest in houses, a spouse, we may start a family. In Buddhism, this blood and sweat red phase in our lives can be compared to the severe asceticism of the Buddha suffered as a young man to overcome the desires of the body. The white phase of our lives is our middle age years, where we polish our kids' behavior and send them off to college. We are doing good things at work, and frankly, us guys are looking like white knights as we fix the sink, fix the car, change the light bulbs, and save money for our retirement. In Buddha's life, this was the middle way, the way of teaching, the way of learning. Now, the black phase is my favorite. This is the consultant phase of our lives. This is where I am currently. We don't work as hard, and people come to us for our wisdom and experience as opposed to the long hours we put in at work. For Buddha, this was the time he spent under the Bodhi tree, meditating and watching his thoughts come and go, his mind starting to break free of the constraints of the ego. Back to our story. That afternoon, the young man caught the apple, but this time he rode away with it. King's men galloped after him. They got so close they gave him a leg wound with the end of a sword. The young man escaped, but his horse made such a powerful leap to do so that the young man's helmet fell off and everyone could see he had golden hair. The king's men rode home and told the king everything that had happened. The king's daughter the next day inquired to the gardener about his boy. He's back at work in the garden. Strange Coot went over to the festival yesterday and he just got back last night. He showed me these 3 golden apples. He showed them to my children that he won. The king called the young man in and he appeared with his kerchief back on his head. The king's daughter, however, went up to him and pulled it off. And his golden hair fell down over his shoulders. And his beauty was so great that everybody was astonished. The king said, "Are you the knight that appeared each day at the festival with a different color horse and each day caught the golden apple?" "I am," he said, "and the apples are here." Taking the apples from his pocket, he handed them to the king. "If you need more evidence, you can look at the wound your men gave me when they were chasing me. What's more, I am also the knight who helped defeat the enemy." If you can perform feats of that magnitude, you are obviously not a gardener's boy. Who is your father, I may ask? "My father is a notable king." It is clear the king said, "I am in debt to you. Whatever I have in my power that would please you, I will give." "Well," the young man said, "I suggest you give me your daughter as my wife." The king's daughter laughed and said, "I like the way he doesn't beat around the bush. I already knew he was no gardener's boy from his golden hair." And so she walked over and kissed him. The young man's father and mother were among those invited to the wedding. They came, and there was great joy because they had given up hope they would never see their son again. While all the guests were sitting at the table for the marriage feast, the music broke off all at once, and the great doors swung open. And a baronial king entered, accompanied by a procession of many attendants. He walked up to the young groom and embraced him. The guest said, "I am Iron John, and through an enchantment became turned into a wild man, and you have freed me from that enchantment. All the treasures that I own will now belong to you." In Sanskrit, the word for freedom is moksha. In our story, Iron John's freedom from his enchantment can be called moksha. His freedom, our freedom, from the hindrances that bind us to suffering, the fear of change, our ostentatious desires, our selfishness, become our state of enchantment. His freedom, our freedom, as we break our own malicious enchantment by showing up to the Windward Buddhist temple, by doing the bucketing to follow the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, is how we do this. This leaves us with a happy fairy tale ending of ultimate peace. And so that is the end, and I want to thank the opportunity to share the story with you. N-A-B, Namu Amida Butsu.
Thank you very much, Michael. Okay, please turn to your brown Praises of the Buddha book for Gatha Namu Amida Butsu on page 104. Please stand. Thank you. Please be seated.
Nembutsu.
I'm sorry. Namu Amida Butsu. Please stand.
The Eightfold Path is the best. Of all truths, the Four Noble Truths are the best. Of all things, passionless is the best. Of men, the seeing one, the Buddha is the best. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namu Amida Butsu. Namo Namo Namo.
Please be seated. Sorry about that. I don't know. I think I'm thinking about bingo or something. I don't know. I'm sorry. So this concludes the formal portion of today's service. President Dennis is not able to join us today, so I will make the announcements for him. So please bear with me. Next Sunday's service will be a regular family service. It will also be the inaugural Minister Appreciation Day service to recognize and encourage the efforts of Reverend Sol Kalu. The service will be run entirely by the Windward Buddhist Temple Certified Ministers Lay Assistants, or CMLAs. The CMLAs are Cookie, Jennifer, Prudence, Shirley, Dennis, and myself. Cookie will lead the service, and Jennifer will provide a Dharma message. Reverend Sol will have a special seat in the front row. Next Sunday will also be the start of our fall food drive to benefit the Hawaii Food Bank. There will be boxes set up in front of the temple office. The food drive will end on November 17th. After next Sunday's service, Prudence will lead volunteers to pack women's period care kits to be given to the Ma'i Movement Hawaii, who provides for homeless women and girls. Reminder that the WBT Family Dinner and Movie Night is on Saturday, October 26th. The movie will be Inside Out 2. Dinner starts at 5:30, and the movie will start at 6:30. So please look for the sign-up sheet on the back table and sign up your family, children, grandkids, etc. Are there any other announcements by anyone? Okay, thank you. Let's now recite the words of thanksgiving. This can be found in your red service book on page 126. We are truly grateful for this wonderful food, a gift of life. May we share its benefits with all beings. As we partake of this food, let us remember Amida Buddha's compassion, which surrounds all people and all forms of life.
Namu.
Namu Amida Butsu. Itadakimasu.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's it. And don't forget bingo today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.